Welcome to the Stop Over Drinking and Start Living podcast, where high-achieving, goal-oriented rebel women come to learn how to live a vibrant and fulfilling life without requiring alcohol to get through it. No labels, no judgments, no saying you'll never drink again. Just real proven methods to help you stop rebelling against yourself with alcohol so you can drink less and do more. I'm your host, Angela Mascenik. Let's dig in. Welcome to episode 210, Dry January discussion with Stop Drinking Coach for Men, Patrick Fox. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the podcast. This past weekend, Patrick Fox, a certified stop drinking coach for men, and I teamed up and we did a webinar together around Dry January. And we discussed some very common obstacles, such as how to handle partners and friends who still drink while you're trying to take a break or doing Dry January, how to treat yourself really well during this process of you cutting back, even if you overdrink. And I really think you guys need to hear this, because what you do when you overdrink and you don't follow through to yourself, that's part of taking good care of yourself. We don't want to beat ourselves up about that. So we dig into that. We answer your questions around that. We talked about urges, how to handle those urges, how to process our feelings through the day so we have less urges at the end of the day. And then a lot about digging deeper than just counting the days. So tools to make it last. And you don't want to miss, this is a 90-minute episode. We answered your questions. We got deep into some of this stuff. And I highly recommend that you go for a nice long walk or grab your notebook and sit back with a cup of tea or something and listen to this episode to support your efforts. And whether you're doing Dry January or not, if you're here, you're wanting to cut back on your alcohol, and this episode will absolutely support you. I also mentioned during the class how you can get on the list to find out what's next. I have closed down enrollment to my 6-month coaching program, but right now I am working on what's next, and I am so freaking excited, y'all. Like, I'm getting the chills just even talking about it. So you have to go to angelamascenik.com/what's next. That's /WHATS -NEXT. So angelamascenik.com/what's next. We will link that up in the show notes here. But you got to get on the list, because I'm putting together something that's in limited supply. And it's going to be really affordable. And the people on this list are going to get the first chance to get it. And it's going to sell out. So I don't want you to be disappointed. I didn't get a chance when you start seeing all the things about it. You want to get your name on this list, okay? That's all that's happening right now is you're going to submit your email address. We're collecting those. And then when it's ready to go, which will probably be early February, we will send you an email and we're like, here's your chance. And it's super, super fun. And I want you to be excited about it and look forward to it. It's going to be something totally different and new. And I'm just really excited to share it with you. So angelamascenik.com/what's next. And I hope you enjoy this episode. Oh, we've also linked up how you can connect with Patrick in the show notes as well. Follow him on Instagram. Recommend his podcast to all of your male friends in your life and partners, and enjoy. Thanks, Patrick, for being here. Welcome to the Dry January webinar with myself, Angela Mascenik, and Patrick Fox. And we are here today to just help you with some tools about how to be successful during Dry January, how to take it a little bit deeper than just counting days about being alcohol free, and so that you can feel good about taking some of these tools when you leave this month and continuing to explore your relationship with alcohol. So we have some like 4 main topics we're going to discuss. I'll share that, or we will share that in a minute. But I thought we could start by just introducing ourselves. Patrick, you want to just tell them the short and dirty about you and how you got here, and a little bit about your story, and then I'll go, and then we can jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Angela. Yeah, okay, I'll keep it real short. So my name is Patrick Fox. I am a life coach. I work with men who want to rethink alcohol in their lives. And not just alcohol, it is more commonly now as a lot of addictions, I think, is what it boils down to, and it's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, right? Like that emotional piece. So I stopped drinking alcohol in my life 4 years ago. I completely severed ties with it, if you like. That's just what worked best for me after many attempts at micromanaging it, if you like. So yeah, I celebrated 4 years a week ago. So that was super fun.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And from stopping drinking and like all of these other things that were going on in my life, it reignited my passion with coaching, and it gave me focus, it gave me purpose, and like all of that energy that I took back from not being hungover, not thinking about drinking, and all of those other things that come with it. I've just completely plowed into helping other people, and I was reflecting on this the other day, like it, doing my podcast, working with other people has been a massive part of my recovery, if you like, as well. So yeah, that's been really, really fun.
That's
There you go.
awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Can you tell them just a little bit more about like what it looked like for you and your drinking before you decided to stop or change it?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say I was a binge drinker.
Mhm.
So for me, kind of Thursday through Sunday was a heavy drinking, a lot of going out. Sometimes it was all through the week as well, but generally not so much. And I was drinking a lot, doing a lot of drugs as well, right? And it came to a point where I just like had this nudge. Like I knew that I didn't want to do it anymore. I knew it was kind of like holding me back from doing other things in my life. I
Mhm.
couldn't quite pinpoint what it was, but so I would do things in secret almost, right? Like, so I knew there was this part of me that wanted to stop drinking. So I started using health as a reason to stop drinking. So I'd sign up for running events. I said I wasn't going to drink because I wanted to like perform better for running. So like there was still part of me that could see that drinking was impacting all of these things. But even at
Mhm.
one point, when I was thinking about being a dad, like I found out that alcohol can affect sperm count and stuff like that. So again, that there was like these little nudges taking me towards this direction of shifting my relationship with alcohol. So I had a few attempts at not drinking. I think most of the time half-hearted. Like I was like, I'm not going to drink this week. I'll just drink on the
Mhm.
weekends, and then
Yeah.
by Wednesday, we'd crack open a bottle of wine, and then it would just kind of like escalate. And then,
Mhm.
as brains do, that all or nothing thinking was like, oh, I'll start again next week.
Yeah.
But and and then in 2017, the year my son was due to be born, I also got into the London Marathon. And at that point, I was like, I'm not going to drink this year. And I didn't drink for nearly 7 months of that whole year. I had one glass of champagne after 100 days, which I found in my journal, which was amusing. But yeah, that's not bad in the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah.
And then it came to like the summertime in the UK, and it was hot outside, and my baby'd been born, and all these things. And then like I just found myself back drinking again. And this time when I started drinking, I started getting really bad hangovers, like worse than I'd ever had before. And then I started using cocaine to assist me in being able to drink more. Because the weird thing, Andrew, is like I didn't actually like being drunk, like as in not having my wits about me. I like the
Yeah.
feeling of being drunk, but I just didn't like the being drunk. I didn't like not being able to remember what had happened and all of those things.
Mhm.
And I think it started getting a little bit scary where like there was like bits of the nights that I couldn't remember. And like you get that anxiety, like, oh, what did I do? What did I say and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, also just like spending a ton of money, a lot of time and energy being wasted.
And to like
And
maintain the drinking, right? Like adding the drugs to help you maintain the relationship with alcohol. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
exhausting.
It's a lot of work to maintain
It,
that
like
relationship, you know?
there's a lot of commitment
It
that goes
really
into it.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. You have to be committed. And then because I'd have this like threshold of like 4 or 5 beers, and then that is when I'd have to get drugs. Like have to. Even now I've got that language right. But I wouldn't have. I'd be in my overdraft most of the time because I was just like spending money going out all the time and like making all these promises, and then like the rationalization that I would go through to make it okay to go to the bank and withdraw like another $100 just to go and buy drugs to carry on drinking for the
Wow.
weekend. It's
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. When you look at it now, it feels insane, but in the moment, it made sense to you.
Oh, it made
Sounds
complete
like,
sense.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
That's
like,
that's where we can get kind of like, whoa, because we're in our own mind about some of that shit, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's quite remarkable. So then what happened? Did you have like a big thing or an event or anything like that?
Yeah, so I talk about this is like I hit my rock bottom, right? But rock bottom doesn't mean to have to be like the worst thing in the world that could have ever happened to you, right? Like I think you get to choose your rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
You and what I mean by that is like you just go that I'm done. Like this is it. This is me making a decision. Like I've had enough. So my rock bottom was it was Christmas time 4 years ago, and I didn't drink Christmas Day because we had a new puppy. I think I had like one or two. I didn't drink Christmas Day because I was driving and I had the new puppy, and I was just kind of stressed anyway because I'd already been actively thinking about alcohol use. Like I started reading This Naked Mind by Annie Grace and stuff. So that
Mm-hmm.
like there was this
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance in my mind about what I was doing. I didn't drink Christmas Day really. So then Boxing Day, of course, I had to make it up to myself, right? So I went out, got really drunk, watched my football team. They won. That was another further excuse to keep drinking. We went to the pub. I was with all my mates, and because I was so drunk, I wanted to get drugs at this point. So I was like phoning up all of these people all around my local area, asking people in the pub. It was just like no other thoughts about anything other than getting those drugs. And
Yeah.
I don't remember much of the night other than just like my phone was dying. So I had to go across and buy a charger. Then the charger didn't work. And then I was like getting really anxious because my girlfriend works in a pub and I didn't want her to know what I was doing. But like you know what I mean? It's like all this
Yeah.
crazy stuff. And then there's this image of my son, 1 year old son at home, my puppy at home, my daughter at home, like all of the other family members who were at home and who'd gone back to do whatever that day. And luckily, I didn't get anything that night because I think that was my real sliding doors moment. I think I left the pub that night. I did a shot of some baby Guinness or some shit. I don't remember walking home, but I do remember waking up on the sofa the next morning. My partner came in the room and I was like, I am done. I just cannot do this to myself anymore. No. And
Yeah.
so I committed to take a break from alcohol. It wasn't like I'm never going to drink again. In the UK, and I'm sure it's worldwide now, but we've got like a 1 year no beer
Yeah. We have
organization.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And whilst I didn't go through that actual program, I loved it. It just stuck in my head, right? I
Yeah.
was like, I'm going to do 1 year no beer. Like, let me see
Mhm.
if I can go this year without drinking and see what's different, you
Mhm.
know? But within a few months, like it was apparently or abundantly clear, like I was just done. Like I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't
Yeah.
do it. And
Yeah.
I was feeling so much more confident. And I think the rise of zero beers and lots of other factors kind of helped with all of that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Wow.
yeah, and
Well,
here we
thank you
are,
for
4 years
sharing
later.
that detailed story. I
Yeah,
mean, I
thanks
think
for
it's
asking.
just so helpful for everyone to kind of have a picture because I'm sure somebody has a variation of that story, you know? We all do, especially over and over and over again when we go out or drink more than we want, and then we're like, I'm done the next day. And then it doesn't become I'm done. But this time you listen to yourself, which is remarkable, right?
Yeah, it really is. It's just like can't do this to myself
Yeah.
anymore. And it was strange because it wasn't like I hadn't had those thoughts before, but
Hmm.
something had shifted in me. Like now I
Probably,
actually knew them to
yeah.
be true, right? Like I
Probably like
believed
the
what I was
education
saying.
that you had given yourself before that by reading the book and like the science
Yeah.
around it. And like you saw the patterns probably a little bit more conscious, right? And then it was just like, and yeah, this is it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely that book made a massive difference. Do you know, I think one of the biggest things was in that book, and we know as well, right outside of it, but like alcohol is ethanol.
Yeah.
And I think about that, and I'm like, ethanol's, like some additive that they put in fuel for cars and planes and all of this stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
why are we drinking that?
I know. I know.
You
It's
know?
toxic, right?
Yeah. Pure
Yeah.
pure alcohol will kill you.
Right.
Like that's why we drink it at like 4 or 5 and then up to 15, maybe 30, whatever. Like because pure alcohol its purest form is absolutely lethal to
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't know my story, I'll keep it short and brief too, but basically I overdrank um for my whole life ever since I started drinking, partying in college, all that kind of thing. And then it became just more sophisticated looking when I graduated college and like had money and like had to entertain clients and things like that. So I would, wine and dine people and travel and, like it would be like a fancy cocktail or a martini or something like that. And then there was wine club memberships and I got into wine and like I had this identity around being somebody who knew a lot about wine. And my husband and I got married in a winery. Like it was just very much entrenched into our lifestyles. And I would still try to cut back and all of that. Like I like if I traveled or something, I went to like a sales meeting and we would totally overdrink and party because it's like, work hard, play hard type culture. I would remember like flying home and like my ankles would be swollen on the airplane. And like that was, oh, this is how crazy it was. That's my sign that I need to cut back. I have to wait for my ankles to swell for me to be like, it's time to take a break. Like
Yeah.
I would let it get that far, right? I mean, it's so crazy, like what our things are, right? For me, that was like, yep, I can tell I need to, do a detox. My ankles are swollen and that's uncomfortable. So I would diet, I would go and restrict myself very heavily. I would do like a juice cleanse or some sort, and I would struggle with my weight and I had food stuff too. So like there was all of that combined. And then it just like kind of kept creeping up. So it would be a Tuesday and it'd be stressful after work or whatever. And then I had 3 kids back to back and I was working full time. So like as my life got more involved, my stress levels, my anxiety levels, overwhelm, all that stuff went up. And that's when I used alcohol more, especially wine after work to take the edge off all that stuff. And I had actually quit my job. I was in advertising at the time. And because I knew like kind of like you, Patrick, I was exploring a different way of doing things. I'm like, my life isn't working for me, but I didn't really pinpoint it to the alcohol. I
Yeah.
was like, but I just can't keep doing what I'm doing. So I actually started a blog, a healthy lifestyle blog. And I was going to figure out how to like make my own money online. So I quit my job, but I wasn't making any money and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was very confused about what to tell people. This is such a weird story, but like I was confused and I had this identity thing. I'm like, I'm not a professional right now. And I'm also just not a stay-at-home mom. And like, I don't know what I am. And I found life coaching. And then within I joined a life coaching program and they said, make a goal for the year. Like the one thing that you have been struggling with the longest, like, let's work on that. And for me, it was my weight because my parents put me on a diet when I was 8 years old. So like there was just a whole long of history of dieting and up and down and, alcohol was involved as well. But when I started working on that, I decided to not drink until I got to my goal weight. And that break that I gave myself from alcohol completely changed my life. Like it just totally opened everything up for me. I learned how to be with my feelings. I learned how to manage my mind. I learned how to follow through for myself. And I really clearly saw the block that alcohol was doing to me. Like it wasn't good for me. And so 6 months later, I decided to not drink. I did drink a little bit after that initial break that I gave myself. But then I finally just like, I don't really want this anymore. Like it was just like, I'm done. Like even just one drink. It wasn't that I was over drinking or anything. It was just one drink, put a veil over me. I didn't feel that clarity and that connection with my family. I liked feeling alive. I liked the way I was feeling without it. And so I'm like, why do I keep doing this? And so I just stopped and it's going to be 5 years in June.
Amazing. Love
Yeah.
it.
So now that's what I do. I figured out how to help people online and create a business. So that's kind of where that story goes. And so I've developed many coaching programs for women. I have a podcast too. It's called Stop Over Drinking and Start Living. And that's my story.
Nice. Well, thank you for sharing. And what I love about Angela is like, even though it seemed so weird or felt so weird, is like we just don't know what it's going to look like. There's that great Steve Jobs quote about like you can only join the dots looking backwards.
Yeah.
It's like you might do something and you might have no idea like why you're doing it or what the purpose of it is, but like some point in the future you'll look back and go, oh, okay, like, I had to do that in order to get to this next part.
Yes.
This next realization, change, whatever it looks like. So yeah,
I think it's
cool.
like just like you start tuning in to hearing yourself. It's like for you, it's like, oh, I'm going to use the physical fitness to figure this out. I'm going to do these things to have this boundary so hard for myself that I can't drink because I've got to train for this race, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like focusing on the alcohol thing. And for me, it was like, my life is so a fucking hot mess and it's too overwhelming. It's not worth having a 2-income household anymore. So I'm going to quit my job. That was my kind of listening to like what's not working. But that opened up my space to figure my own shit out, right? Like instead of staying in that cycle that wasn't working.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Nice.
Does anybody have any questions? You
Yeah.
can type
We love
them in
questions.
chat if you want to. But we can dig into the next or the first question. The first question or the first topic was partner and friends, partners or friends who still drink while we're trying to do a dry January or cut back. So what
Yeah.
do you want to say about that?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it this week, and it's like it's other people's opinion about you doing something for yourself, right? And like they feel like they're entitled to have one about your decision. And
Entitlement.
it never really works that way, right?
Right.
So there was a word that you said when you were sharing about your journey, right? And it's all about identity.
Mm,
And when we identify as someone or doing something, like creates a lot of certainty for ourselves. And that's true for other people as well. So I think about when I stopped drinking alcohol, like me, my partner, we both used to drink at the time. So for me to stop drinking and her then to be drinking still, like there was a big identity shift happening for both of us, like me getting used to this new identity of not drinking and her also like getting used to the identity of me not drinking as well. So it's almost like a grieving process.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just like interesting to look at it from that perspective as well. But
Mhm.
yeah, people are going to have an opinion, right? It's got nothing to do with you. I can't stress that enough. It really hadn't. It's like all about what their expectations are, what they think that you should or shouldn't be doing. And you know, we're all kind of a little bit selfish in terms of like, well, how's that going to impact me? Like, if you do that, well, what's that going to look like for me as well? So if
Yeah.
you're making that choice not to drink, like somebody else is going to think, well, how's that impacting us?
Yeah. I mean, that I don't think that they consciously think that the other
No.
person. So we had on one of my coaching calls today, the woman said that her friend said, "Oh, you're no fun." Like
Mhm.
after they had gone out together and the woman didn't drink,
Yeah,
like sent her a follow-up text, "You're no fun now that you're not, with this not drinking thing." First of all, that's rude. Don't ever say that to somebody.
it's
P.S. Tell all
brutal.
of your friends, all of your, don't ever fucking say that to somebody. Like that is just, how is that feel good? Like, and you just became the person who's not fun anymore. That, right? Like talk about like the energy of being that person. I used to be that person too, though. It's just in all fairness, like I used to be the pusher and the partier and like one more and come on, don't be boring, all of that shit. So I apologize to all the people that I used to do that too. And I've learned so much. Like, just don't do that. Like, let people have their own choices, right? Don't say that. It's just not very friendly or fun to say you're no fun to somebody. That's what people might say on the playground in elementary school.
And also, like, what's the intention behind that person saying it, right? You know,
It's
just
because they're feeling what?
yeah,
Left out, probably. Or like there's a disconnect, there's a shift that they're like, okay, this person is changing and our identities together are not as in sync as they once were. And so that probably just feels difficult for them. But what we have to remember is that's for them, that is their own sort of emotional response, right? And it doesn't have anything to do, it's about what they think they might be losing. It's
yeah,
not about you, no matter what they say. If they say you are doing this or you are no fun, it's when people say those things and act that way. Remember, like what Patrick and I teach is anything that we do or don't do, say, don't say, is based on how we feel. So if someone says something unkind to you, you have to think about what they must be feeling to say that. And it could be threatened, left out, confused, right? And so when they feel that way, we generally don't act great, right? And especially people who don't know this kind of work.
yeah,
So I'm not trying to give them a pass or anything. It's still totally freaking rude, but just know that that's coming from their own pain that they probably have no idea about because they're still drinking.
yeah. Well, I don't think it's like such a beautiful example. It's got nothing to do with you, right? Like it's all about them. It's about what, as you said, what they think they're going to lose, what they're afraid of in the friendship. Like maybe they have this expectation that you're the one that they go out with to unwind, quote unquote, with alcohol. And like now that you might not be doing that, and they're worrying about, well, what am I going to do in the future? How am I going to
Right.
take care of my own needs, right?
Yes, it's all about them. It's all about them. It's not so much
Yeah.
about you. So, so the other part of that, just kind of understanding, like when people say that, that's what that means, and that's what kind of like that's for them to figure out. Not you don't have to explain anything to anybody if you don't want to. And I think, like, especially with people who are married or partnered and they live together, it can be kind of complicated, right? Or like they might be monitoring you when you said you were doing dry January, or right, or like they're tracking you or something, right? And this came up today too. It's like when they might say something to you about your drinking, right? Or not drinking, like what can we do to help them with that?
Yeah.
It's like whenever there's an opportunity, when somebody says something you don't like, it's an opportunity for you to look at your own relationship with alcohol. So like even if somebody says they don't, why, like judging you for not drinking, try to be conscious of that and be like, okay, so instead of me worrying about what that person is thinking or doing, how can I just focus on working on my relationship with alcohol? How can I
Yeah.
take that time and energy and look at what I'm feeling right now, what I'm thinking about it? Because that's the most important thing when you are the one making the changes.
And I think it's a skill, right? Like rethinking alcohol in your life is a massive thing because of, we just look around in the world that we're in. And only yesterday I was with some people and they were really frustrated because they'd stopped drinking for 6 years and they were watching this program, and like it was about women who something had happened, like some stress, and the first thing they do is go and drink alcohol, right? Like so
Yeah.
we're getting that conditioning like even
Yeah.
now.
Yes.
And when you're making that choice for yourself, like I don't want to say you're going to be vulnerable, but I think you might be a little bit more sensitive to other people's reactions to it. And so it's just like you've got to be patient with yourself and like develop that, nurture yourself through that process as well.
Mhm. Yeah, because what other people say definitely is a trigger sometimes, right? Like
Yeah.
the emotions behind what they're saying, the energy behind what they're saying can land on us differently than maybe they are intending it to be. And just to know, like when you're not drinking, you probably haven't been aware of how you've been feeling for a while, right?
That's yeah. It's like going to the doctor, the dentist, and like you've got a nerve exposed, right? Like stuff's gonna
Yes.
be a little different than it did in the past.
Yeah, and it won't always be like that. Like, of course, like that's part of the process is learning how to be with your feelings and like this taking a break during dry January will expose you. So it's like I was imagining this visual recently. It's like this, I'm like literally an exposed nerve, like walking around, right? And I'm susceptible for to triggers and pain and all the things, right? And once you give yourself a chance to look at that and process those feelings and interrupt the patterns that you had, then it becomes a lot easier. It doesn't mean it's never going to be painful or you're not experiencing negative emotions, but it just becomes a lot easier to manage. So dry January gives you an opportunity to expose all that shit.
Yeah.
And I would just invite you to pay attention to it. When you do feel those really hard feelings, to get curious about that instead of judging yourself, blaming somebody else, like really go in and be like, okay, what is this about? Why am I
Yeah.
so upset about this thing? Why am I so reactive to this thing? Grab a journal, write out all your thoughts and your feelings about the situation so you can see it. And then, let yourself just pause and breathe and process that through and break that cycle. We don't want to just try to cover it up with something else, right? Like food or scrolling on Facebook or deep cleaning the house. I mean, that can be helpful sometimes, but you know what I'm saying? Do you have anything to add to that? Like, we don't want to like not pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, like as you were sharing that, what came up for me is that, if someone says something, as you're saying, like not to blame them or not even necessarily to try and understand them and why they're saying it. I think that's not what we're saying at all. It's like actually the invitation is just to come back to yourself. Is
Yes.
yeah, what's happening for me? Like what am I afraid of, right? Like, so if someone else is afraid they're not going to have their drinking partner, well, what fears are coming up for me when they say that, right? Like, because also there's someone in your life that you might not have the same relationship as well. And
Mhm.
how we are wired as humans is for connection, right? And so something like that can seem like a big deal to our brain. So I think, yeah,
Yes.
really coming back to yourself, getting curious, compassionate, you know, they're all skills as well. I think if that's not something you've done before, like it's about developing that in yourself as well,
Yes. Yeah.
And I
I
think
think it's,
journaling is an amazing tool to start doing
yeah,
that with.
getting coaching, talking about
100%.
joining a group of people with that are working on this kind of stuff together, who are open to sharing this stuff with people. Um, I think if you look at some of those things when people say something or do something, right? And instead of wondering why they did that or said that and spending all that time making up stories about why you think they did that or this or that, like that
Yeah.
just causes you unnecessary suffering, by the way. And we have no idea why we do it. We really like knowing the human condition. We're driven by how we feel to say things, do things, whatever. That's fine. But spending any more time wondering why they're doing something like that is just time taking away where you could look at yourself and really dig in and learn something about yourself, because this isn't going to be the only time that you're triggered about something, right? We're humans and everybody says stupid shit all the time, including myself.
Yeah, right. Like we're emotional beings. Like
Yeah.
that's part of being a mammal. And you know, it's such a good point. Like there's just no point trying to understand why somebody else is doing something.
Yeah.
Just get super curious with yourself. I think
Yeah.
can't stress that bit enough.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody
And
have any questions about partners or friends or people saying stuff or all that? I mean, we could talk about this for a full hour.
sure. Well, just what was coming up for me as well is like, even if you notice that your brain does want to keep latching on to what they said and stuff, like just know that's normal as well. Like that's not something to then beat yourself up about. Like just to step back, go, oh, I'm thinking about what they said again, right? Like I'm not,
Yeah.
and watch what it creates in you as well. I think that's fascinating. Like sometimes I'll be doing the washing or I'll be doing some like trivial task and I'll start thinking about something and I'll start getting annoyed about it. I'll start feeling the build up in me. I'm like, why am I thinking about this? It's just like absolutely crazy. So yeah, just like begin watching what you're thinking, I think is
Yeah.
super important as well.
It's like understand, like for you and me, we this is second nature at this point, but like I think
Yeah,
for me, the first cue that I
weird.
might be ruminating on something is how I feel. So if I'm real anxious or I'm uptight or I notice myself thinking about the same problem over and over and over again, or I feel really hot about something, I'm like, all right, like what's going on? Like what am I thinking right now? Because that's always the answer to how we're feeling on the inside. It's like I'm thinking they shouldn't be doing. It's usually like somebody shouldn't be doing something that they are, or something shouldn't have happened the way it did. It's a variation of one of those things that gets me going.
Yeah, non-acceptance.
And we're not like this still happens for us, even though we're coaches and we know how to manage our mind. You can't prevent it from coming in, but you can learn how to manage it. Like Patrick keeps saying, it's a skill, right? An awareness. We have awareness. We know what to do with our feelings instead of go drink. But that's taken practice, a lot of practice and awareness and coaching and being willing to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The next question or topic we had was how to treat yourself well, even if you overdrink. You want
Yeah.
to lead us off on that one?
Yeah, I think it's again another really important topic, and you know, the brain's natural tendency is centered towards negativity bias, right? Like that's all part of that survival brain in ourselves. So if we do something that we don't if we do something that we don't want to do, say like overdrink, for example, like our brain's going to focus on that and it's going to start making it a problem for ourselves. And the more that we start making it a problem, we'll start beating ourselves up and criticizing ourselves and asking ourselves questions like, oh, why did I do that? Why am I so stupid? What's wrong with me? Just
Mhm.
know that your brain's a bit like Google, right? Like when you type a search into Google, it goes away and it finds all the answers for you. Well, your brain's doing exactly the same thing, right? So the way in which you treat yourself, the way in which you ask yourself about what happened really, really matters. And so it's kind of the same thing we're talking about there, with partners and or other people saying something. Is like noticing how you're talking to yourself. Like, are you treating yourself with love and respect and curiosity and compassion like you would, like kids, if you've got kids, or even your partners, or the people that you love in your life, at least, right? Are you giving that to yourself?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, and I see it all the time, and I do it myself still, even now, is like sometimes the answer is no.
Yeah. I mean, that's our default setting. So there's that, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't prevent it from coming in. Like sometimes I wake up in the morning and it's just like, I don't know. I just like, it's not even that I'm like, it doesn't sound like I'm being mean to myself. But when I check it, I'm like, oh, that's not really nice. Good morning, Angela. How about good morning? Like, do you say good morning to yourself? I started doing that like a few months back, and I
No,
swear to God, it changes my whole day. I'm like, instead of like running through my list or analyzing something in my mind, or just like, oh, good morning. Like we don't need to do that to ourselves. It's not super like that's kind of like I had this mantra for all of last year, and I probably will have it forever now, but it's like allow space and time for things and people who support and love you, and less time and for things for people, or less time and energy around for people and things that don't support you. And that negative self-talk falls into that lower bucket. That doesn't support me. That doesn't make me feel good. And so I'm giving that less time, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So when you have an overdrink, your brain is going to go into, most people anyway, to the shame game and the guilt and the regret and all that kind of stuff. And just know that that's normal, and you don't have to buy into it. You just and it sounds like this in your head. You wake up, I didn't follow through, or I made a mistake or whatever. And like, I'm so mad. Like, I hear you. And you know what? We're going to take care of ourselves today. I'm going to go figure out what happened so I can learn from it. I'm going to drink a lot of water. I'm going to rest when I need to rest. I'm going to eat well today, and we're going to figure this out. Total different than I have to shame myself and be hard on myself and be remorseful about it. None of that works, because until you get really good at feeling your feelings and interrupting that automatic process that happens when you feel bad, that is more likely to drive more of the behavior that you don't want, those negative feelings. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the thoughts I practice is that I refuse to speak to myself like that anymore. Like, I'm just not going to do it. It's not nice. It's not kind. Like, I wouldn't speak to anybody else in the world like it.
Yeah.
It's funny because and it still happens sometimes, right? Like, I'm not saying, I don't think we ever get rid of it. I was
No.
watching a really amazing Gabor Mate training the other day, and he's talking about the uber ego, like uber ich, as Freud calls it. And it's just like that voice that we hear is just like some really younger version of ourselves that was doing something to try and protect us at a younger age, right? But and this sounds funny, but like he calls that voice stupid. He goes, because it can't learn, like it doesn't have the ability to learn. And so like you have to be the adult for it. So like even think about that conceptually. Like when you hear that voice, like who is that voice? What age is that voice? Is it even your voice, or is it like someone
Your
from your youth?
parents' voice.
Yeah, your
I
parent,
recently
the
saw that. I'm
school
like, that's
bully.
not me. I don't think that way. I'm like, that's not mine.
Yeah,
I don't want to
exactly.
think that way anymore, right? And then you can come back to who you are and how you want to think.
Yeah, and I think that's you can like detach yourself from it almost as well, and I think that could be really helpful for perspective. But like I went out the other week for a meal with my family, and I said something to my daughter, and I didn't like what I said, and then I went to the toilet, and just like this absolute wave of abuse happens, like you're fat, you're an idiot, you're stupid, like all of this stuff, and I was just like, whoa, man, like it was intense,
Wow.
and even though that voice is there, right? Like I think you can look at it from another lens as well, is that it's actually showing you that there is something else important to you that you're wanting to work towards,
Yes.
you know? So even though
Yeah.
it doesn't feel great and all of that, but it's like it's showing you there is something else that you want.
Right. It's like disappointment, we want to be disappointed when we don't follow through, right? We want to see that. Not that we need to say, I'm disappointed in myself and I should be disappointed in myself and I don't follow through on it. Like, that's not what we're talking about. But that feeling that all of our feelings have very important information to share with us. And even though the shame and the guilt and the disappointment and the regret, all of that, those feelings they don't really help us. Like, if we continue to engage with them, but their initial show up is here to get our attention, right? They're like, hey, we don't like this, right? Hello, pay attention to me. And
Yeah.
the voice that it comes with, right? That's another thing. Like, we can manage that, but that feeling that you're getting, it's like your little red flag is going up, like, help. And so we want to listen to that. Like, okay, I'm feeling this way again. What is that about? What, maybe I can like learn about that. There's a message here for me that I want to tap into, right? I'm out of alignment. It's like, it's a sign that you're out of alignment in how you want to do things. And your story about like, you're out of alignment with the way you want to parent, right? And so that
Yeah.
feeling came up to show you, like, hold on a second. Whoa, maybe, and then you can decide what you want to do from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that for me is like comes around showing you what you want, but also like your values, what's most important to you. So when I was in my beginning of like rethinking my relationship to alcohol, like one of my values is health, right? And vitality, and drinking alcohol was obviously massively in conflict with that. And so like that's where that kind of dynamic came from that as well. So I think, like what's important to you, what matters to you, like all of these
Yeah.
things are great questions. And when you're getting curious about them, like you're going to start treating yourself differently
Yeah.
because you're being congruent, you're being in alignment with what's your truth.
Yeah. And if you don't know what's important to you, you should go find out.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to buy into your life and live your life in accordance to what is good for you and what you want. And a lot of times people reach a certain age and they're totally, like, for me, I was following this very scripted pathway to what I thought looked like success and what you should do, the standard American lifestyle, the house, the kids, the career, the husband, the dog, the cat, all of these things, right? And what wasn't working, it just wasn't working for me. So a lot of times people just ignore that. They're like, that's just the way it is. And this is, my mom did it too. And just, they keep going.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, I did that for a long time. And then we escape that. We want to numb that. Our feelings, that overwhelm, that stress, all that. It's like, hey, this isn't working. Right. And instead of ignoring that and trying to just like ignore the anxiety or whatever, like, we have to give ourselves some space to understand what it is, what we really want. And so use this month as that opportunity. Whatever your triggers are coming up, ask yourself, what is it that I really want? What, if I have an overdrink, what was I missing for myself of that day? Where didn't I show myself what I really wanted? Did I even ask myself what I wanted? We need to put ourselves at the very top of the list when we're doing this work. There's so many nuances to all of that, but I just want you to think about how to make yourself a priority and ask those questions. Is this something that I want to recommit to doing for my life? Do I want to make dinner every night? Do I want to be the one that walks the dog all the time? You know what I mean? Like, we have to like say yes to this stuff. Otherwise we just carry a lot of resentment and we buy into the system of the way it should be. And that feels very much out of alignment with who we are. And then we numb and we escape and we look for things to make us feel better that doesn't actually help.
Yeah. Just the word powerless just comes into my head as you were sharing
Oh,
about it. You just feel powerless to anything. So yeah.
yeah.
And that's not just for drinking, but like that's life as
Life.
well. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just, for
Absolutely.
us, it showed up as an addiction to alcohol, right? Like,
Yeah.
we use alcohol to numb our feelings. And even though you guys just sometimes say it's just a habit, it's not true. Habits don't just happen. Like, you have to build that habit by being in response to your feelings. So we want to like go a little bit deeper there. And I was taught too, in our culture, in our society, in my family system, that is what you do. Like, you just drink to be more fun, to deal with your shit, like all of it. And you don't have to, like, it doesn't have to be a tool to manage your life. You can have an amazing life and learn how to manage it and build a life that feels good for you and sometimes you have to ruffle the feathers. So like going back to what other people are thinking and saying about you changing things up, when you start honoring yourself, it's going to like, you're like shaking that rug, and people are going to have some things to say about it. And so I don't want that to prevent you from living your best life. Because people are going to have opinions until the day you die, but you have to understand what your own opinion is about your own life, and then start following through on living the life that you want to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like notice how many opinions you have of other people as well, right? It's just such a human thing to
I
do.
mean, judging other people is like, that doesn't feel good, by the way. Have you ever noticed you judging somebody and how you feel while you're doing that? Doesn't feel fun. Like, it's
Yeah,
not loving, doesn't feel like joyous or anything, right? It's like, doesn't feel good.
nice. Yeah. And so we've got a quick question from Anne here about how spouses can help, and then I think from there, like it feels like a real good segue to go into the urges piece of things as well. So let's look at this question by Anne. Right, like mention how
Okay.
your spouse can help you.
Mhm.
Do you want to go first, or I've got some ideas?
Yeah, you go for it.
Well, and you might not like all of this answer, right? Because sometimes partners might not just want to help, like spouses might not want to support you in your journey. But what I would say is that sometimes that's true. Like in the beginning, they might not be supportive, but over time, when your decisions, identity gets to where you want it to be, like it all begins to normalize. So I spoke about my partner earlier, right? Like in the beginning, it created a little bit of tension in our relationship, but now we're like years down the line, and she buys me alcohol-free beers. Like she's very supportive of it in my life. So like in the beginning, it might be a little bit, I want to say the word rocky, but you know what I mean? Like it might be a little bit different. And then over time, they begin to support you.
Mhm.
That said, other things that you can do are to like really communicate with your partner. Right? Like, I think you were talking about it earlier, Angela. Really like expressing, look, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. I understand that's going to impact you. What can we do about that? How can we help to meet our own needs? I think that's the key thing, right? Like not meet each other's needs, but how can we meet our own needs? Like what can we do to support each other as we go through this transition? And
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's a transition, right?
Yeah, it's like a recalibration of what your relationship looks like. It's a change. And it, change comes like, it can be up and down. It's not going to be like this perfectly smooth sailing thing sometimes, right? I don't really know any big changes where that's the case, right? It's always like can be up and down. And so we just have to be willing to know that it's not going to look a specific way. It's not going to be perfect, and you're going to learn how to communicate with each other better. For me and my husband, like, he had questions too. I was turning 40 at the time when I was working on all of this. And I had planned to have all my local friends come to my favorite wine bar and celebrate my 40th birthday. And I was hosting it and buying it all and everything. And he's like, so you're going to invite people to this wine bar and you're not going to drink. I'm like, yeah, that's going to be great. And he's like, like, he didn't say, like, I could just sense that he was just like, I'll see how that goes. Cause like my
Yeah.
past, right? I mean, this is like, she's going to drink. Anyway, I did it and I showed up and I was like, so fun. And I paid for everything. Like, it was a great time. I legitimately had a good time, and so did they. And so it's almost just like, we have to let them have their own thoughts. I didn't try to change what people were thinking. I just focused on me. And so sometimes people are going to have thoughts and things about it. And it's like, it's okay that they do, because that's just what they are used to seeing. And so if they doubt you or they question you, or they're, fine tuning your drink plan or whatever it is, it's like, it's okay. Because I just need to show them with time and communication and telling them specific details about what I'm working on, it'll become clear down the road if it's not right now. And I also just told my husband, like, I really remember one night I was having some urges, and he was sitting on the couch and I was sitting on the couch, and I looked at him, I'm just like, I'm having some strong urges right now. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, I really want to drink, but I'm trying to learn how to process and feel my feelings in my body. He had never heard this shit before. Like, he probably thought it was just talking in a foreign language, but just talking about it in the real moment of it was really, really helpful for me. Not that I needed him to do anything, it's just like helped me reiterate to somebody that was a human what it was like for me. And it helped him understand me more. And so our relationship actually got better.
Yeah.
So
I that's one of the things I love most about coaching, right? Is like we just get a witness to whatever's going on for ourselves, and you
yeah.
being able to share that with your husband, like it just, I imagine, just like lost so much of its power because like you just got it out of
Yes.
your head. Like, oh, I have
Right.
to, yeah,
It's like,
like
yeah, I want
voice
some
it.
drinks. I'm not going to
Yeah,
do it, but I'm just telling you that's what's happening for me right now. It's just like it's a human response. It's like there's nothing wrong with you for it, right? Yeah. Does that help, Anne? I think like we want people, we can talk about this for a minute. We want people to support us, right? Like we think sometimes some obstacles people have, well, it's really hard for me because my husband, that's all we do. And that's all my friends drink. And you know what I mean? So we kind of give our own limited um I don't know, possibilities for ourselves because we think that nobody's going to be supportive of us, or we have tried in the past and we haven't gotten the support that we think we need. And this is just tough love, but the biggest support you will ever get is from yourself. And so it's almost like you kind of have to let go of people doing things exactly what you think is going to be super helpful for you because we can't control other people. We just can't, but we can control is ourselves if we try to control anything. And so again, just take that energy of your expectations for other people and put them in a loving way onto yourself. And how can you support yourself, or where are you not supporting yourself? Or if you think I need more support from this person or that person, okay, maybe there's a deficiency in the support that I'm giving myself. Where can I go get that for me?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like the more that partners and other people see how committed you are and like how we see you doing what you say you're going to do, they start accepting that reality, like they stop pushing, like there's not as much push on it, if you like, as well. So I think like the more, when my partner, when she really saw I was serious about it, like then she began to accept, like, okay, so this is how it is, right?
Yes.
Then we could just like
Yes.
settle into that, to that new
Yes.
new way of being. And
Absolutely.
sometimes not everyone's going to come along for the ride, unfortunately,
Yeah.
right?
That's
But
that
again,
is
that will
true.
be revealed over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. It's good. Wait, we got another question. Hold on. Lori says, I'm working on the shame, no shame after an overdrink, but I'm wondering how would you respond to a partner that says something like, I thought you weren't going to drink that much again. What do you have to say? Because that's similar to what Anne was looking for too. What do you
Yeah,
say to somebody who's judging you about your drinking?
yeah. Well, I mean, you could. You're right. That wasn't what I was planning to do, and I'm going to learn from it, right? Or you don't have
Same.
anything. It's entirely up to you. You don't
Mhm,
have to defend yourself. But
mhm.
if you feel defensive, be curious.
Yeah.
Why, like, why am I reacting in that way to what they're saying? Because, like I can imagine someone says that something to you like that to you, and you're going to feel like a little bit like attacked, maybe, for want of a better word. But
Mhm.
like you might have a reaction to it, but really, like they're just saying some words, like they're just stating an observation, like, oh, I thought you weren't going to drink as much than you did, and okay, yeah, I did drink that much, and I'm going to do something with it. What do you think there?
No, I think just what I was telling one of my clients earlier today was when you notice the hot feelings coming in response to something like that being said to you, it's because there's some truth to what they're saying.
Yeah,
Even
exactly.
though, even though it doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of that, and we don't want to be monitored and tracked and all that kind of stuff, you have decided, if you've decided to cut back and you've kind of said these things out loud and then you don't follow through, it's like you are probably somewhat disappointed in yourself, but you just don't like being called out on it. And that's okay. It's
Yeah, no one
okay.
loves
And I
being
think,
wrong.
you could just be like, yeah, man, you're right. And I don't really like you telling me about it. And I'm going to go get my journal and I'm going to go figure this out. Right. Or I'm going to get some
Yeah,
support on this, or I'm learning. And and then like go do some of that work. If you're in my program, you definitely know what to do. Go do an evaluation. What happened, right? With curiosity, what was I feeling at the time that I drank more than I wanted to? What was going on for me that day? What was my mind saying to me after I already had a couple drinks that I should have more? Like, I need to capture all of that so I can get some awareness, so I can be aware of that next time I'm around alcohol. And I'm not going to shame myself about it. I'm learning this is a process and I'm going to keep going. So you want to be willing to go back and look at that and kind of evaluate the situation and then come back to your spouse or your partner and be like, yeah, I just learned this so much about me and I am working on it and that's all I can do.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Lisa just went on to say that her daughter asked the same question and it actually helped her in her resolve as well. So, like it really depends where you are in your kind of
Yes.
mindset in terms of how you receive that answer. And
Yeah.
however you receive it is all just information.
It's true. It's information like, oh, yep, you're right. Like maybe you didn't even know, right? And you want that. Or maybe you just get so offended when people say you did something wrong. Like that's for you to kind of explore and figure out like what those triggers are for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, hold on. I think there was another question over here in the chat. Tanya, you live in Wisconsin. Literally, people brag about and take pride in the fact that we are one of the drunkest states in the world. I must break that generational habit of drinking. I think that's so funny because like all of my clients think that their city and their town are like the drunkest like everybody, it's just what you do here. And Patrick probably has the same thing in the UK, right?
Yeah, well, just as a nation, we probably
Yeah.
say that as well, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think when you're around alcohol and it's part of your lifestyle and you're like humans tend to be around people who have similar interests and likes, right? And so it seems like that's the case, but there's all sorts of groups of people who don't drink, like look at big religious groups and things like that. So it's not necessarily true, but however, alcohol killed more people than COVID in 2020. So it's a real thing everywhere. And I love that you're adding that you want to break that generational habit of drinking. I didn't even realize the generational patterns until about 3 years after I stopped drinking. I learned how to stop drinking through life coaching. And so that's very much like making goals and thinking about what you want in the future. And yes, processing feelings and managing your mind. I never did the deeper work of looking at how I was just like programmed to believe that I was boring without alcohol, but after being away from it for a while and learning more about it, my family definitely programmed that. Like I remember as a kid saying, like my grandparents didn't drink and they would call them boring and sticks in the mud and they should just have a drink and loosen up. Like all of that was programmed to me from a child. So when I think about generational stuff, it's not so much like it's a gene, but it's like the water that it's in the water, right? It's in the language that people use around you. It's how they show up, the actions that they take around you that influence you the most.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
what
just
I
good to
will
be aware of.
say, yeah, absolutely. And what I will say is like that's a fucking great why as well, like wanting to break that generational habit of
Yes.
drinking. It's
Yeah,
powerful, like to be
very,
able to
very
look into that
powerful.
more as well.
Yeah, yeah. My kids don't remember me drinking. I'm so glad. No.
Yeah, nice.
And my husband too, like just to give some hope out there to maybe the spouses or their friends who are still drinking a lot and you're trying to cut back. My husband was an overdrinker too. And about 6 to 8 months in or so after I stopped, he totally cut back. He rarely drinks. It's just not a part of his lifestyle anymore. And he started doing a little bit more self-development and like it was just like a delayed response. But the reason why he did that, because he came to those terms on his own, right? I finally made this decision instead of pushing diets on him. We have to do this together, like I did in our whole relationship. I'm like, I'm going to do this for me, and I've got to just let him do him, and that put the pressure off, right? And he just was influenced by my being in the house and his own decisions around it. So it does come, and like all of my clients say that their husbands just kind of start drinking a lot less when they start doing this work too by default. Like it's not because they're making them do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looks like we have
Yeah, a bit of activity. I think maybe like let's talk about urges and feelings now because I think some of these questions that have just come in, I think these might help with
yeah,
what they're asking.
let's do it.
Um,
Do you have to go exactly at 1 or can you go a little bit over?
No, no, I'm good. Yeah, no, I'm having fun. I'm happy to stay and answer questions. Whatever
I
comes
should
up.
probably wrap by 1:30.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, cool. We'll try to get it done in the next 30 minutes. All right, so let's talk about urges. You want to start?
Yeah, yeah. Right. I didn't even know what these things were, right? And
Yeah.
you know, I'm going to be totally honest. Like, I still feel like I'm learning about them as well. You know, I think feelings in general or urges, right? Like, it almost with an urge, it almost feels like a mental thing. Like, I don't even necessarily notice in the body. It's just like my brain just like, do it, do it, do it. I want something, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just, but like underneath that, there's that getting curious about where that's even coming from to begin with. And quite often it's association and dopamine and things that you've done in the past, but
Mm-hmm.
also what it does feel like in the body, because you can slow it down, right? Like, it does feel very mental, but when you develop this practice in yourself, like, you begin to feel it in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not want to feel it in your body because it's almost like something wanting to get out. Like, you wanted to put something in order to get out.
Yeah.
Just like paradoxical, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we want to like it's like quelch it or like quench it or something like that, right? It's like we drink it to like to melt it away or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's great. Like the mind in the way I describe it is like you recognize the urge or like the desire, the want for the alcohol when you notice you're like, I want it, right? You start thinking about it, you're up in your head about it. And so if you're resolved to not do it, like if you've made the commitment to do dry January or whatever it is in the future, you just want almost like, okay, so I recognize that I want this. Okay, I'm not going to think about it right now, but I want to go into my body and notice where I'm feeling it. How do you describe that to people?
Yeah. And so it, I think just coming to your breath, even just for like to pause, just to give yourself, like you were talking about earlier about like interrupting that model, is like, one, noticing that mental wanting something. Two is like, okay, where does it feel? So let's just stop and just like hit pause for a moment. So
Mhm.
when I'm noticing urges, and I didn't know I was doing this, but when I was learning how to meditate or whatever, I was doing meditation, and like that actually is guiding you through like processing your emotions. It's just about literally all it is you're pausing and noticing what is happening in my body. Where's the energy? Where's the movement? Where does it feel tight? Where does it feel uncomfortable? You know? And then like maybe you can feel pulsing or buzzing or tingling, you know, like there's so many different ways that it can show up. Other times it can feel like a heaviness, other times it can feel like a sharpness in different parts of your body. Even just like the sense of like wanting to do something is what is like, where are you feeling that? So like often in your shoulders, we carry quite a lot of our emotion and energy as
Mhm.
well. So
Mhm.
yeah, like there's so many different ways that you can feel it. And again, it's about like practicing and checking in with yourself. Like even now as we're talking, right, like I notice I'm feeling things in my jaw,
Mhm.
but a few years ago I would never have paid attention to that. Like I just wouldn't have known that it was there for me. So I think it's about giving yourself space to practice. The thing I always work with my clients is like, don't wait until you have an urge until you do this.
I say that
Right? Yeah,
too.
because like you know, because our brain will want to just like go into its automation, right?
Yeah.
And it might not feel as accessible. So, you know, with urges, is practice urges ahead of time. Like as you go through your day, like it doesn't have to take long, 20 seconds, close your eyes. What am I feeling in my body? You know, like do that a few times through the day. Like it's a couple of minutes a day. And then so when those urges do come, like you're going to be so much more prepared because you know you've got a tool that you can access.
Yes. I think too, practice processing urges with something not so like addictive as alcohol. So like practice not
Yeah.
picking up your phone every time you have thought about it. Perfect example, right?
Yeah.
Maybe like instead of like being on the internet and checking your email all the time, it's like, how about I don't? And I just sit here with a desire to go check my email and notice what that feels like in my body, right? No big side effect if you end up checking your email, right? So, but at least it helps you understand. I recognize I want to do something, anything. What if I didn't do that? What do I feel in my body if I don't follow through on the suggestion that my brain gave me to go do that thing. It could be yelling at your kids, yelling at your spouse. How about you feel that energy? You're like, oh, I'm noticing that feeling. Where is it? It's hot in my shoulders and my neck and my face. It's like, I just want to get it out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not from experience or anything, but like that's the kind of practice that we're talking about. Don't wait till the end of the day when you're tired and hungry and like all of your resources are tapped out and you've exhausted yourself. Practice checking in with yourself. And there's another benefit to doing that during the day too, is that you get to connect with yourself and you get to have more emotional awareness and vocabulary and understanding about how different feelings feel in your body. And not only will it help you drink less later in the day because you've connected with yourself and like tuned into what you need and what's going on with you, you're not carrying around those emotions all the way to the end of the day, and then you have to escape them all. But it will help you interrupt a lot of things that you may not want to do and feel better. And you don't need anything to do it. It's just like, oh, I'm feeling this. You take some deep breaths, you've resolved it, and you can move on without needing anything to fix anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that as well. Because like one of the questions here is around shame, right? So if you imagine as you're going through your day and that you're actively just like noticing when things come up and you're just like paying attention to them, and you're not following through with that emotion. So say it was like shouting at your kids is the example that you gave, or maybe it's like getting frustrated at somebody in a coffee shop because they're taking too long, like whatever it is. Like when you stop yourself from doing them, you're going to have less judgments, less shame about those things. So, and like as that is actually taking away from how you feel at the end of the day is what you're saying, right? So it's an amazing thing to be able to do for yourself, because the more you do that before you have an urge, the less you're probably going to have urges, to be quite honest.
Absolutely. Because the urge, I like to describe the urge is definitely like, that's the language that we use. We think I'm worried about the urges. And what am I going to do with when I want that, and white knuckling and resisting the urge and all of that. The urge is just kind of like the top layer. If you think about like a cupcake or something, right? The urge is like the feeling, it's a vibration in your body for sure. It gets you to go do something, right? It's pushing you to go do something, but kind of scrape off that top layer of the frosting. And what's underneath that urge is probably a bigger emotion that you need to get curious about. It's like, okay, I want the alcohol, but if I ask myself this question, if I don't drink, what feeling am I going to have to be willing to sit with?
Yeah.
Then that cupcake is going to reveal itself to you. Like, oh, I was pissed off because my boss said this to me at work, or the kids didn't clean up after themselves, or whatever the fuck it is, right? That will be answered to you. You just have to listen, ask yourself those questions. And then you can work on processing that feeling, which is exactly the same process as processing an urge. It's just breathing. Where do I feel that anger in my body? Just saying I'm angry, it's okay. I don't need to go drink from that. What can I do that would be more helpful for me? All of that stuff really, really helps.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's like the habitual drinking thoughts that create desire, like getting home at the end of the day. Maybe you've got a routine about like have a glass of wine with dinner and stuff like that. But the other times where perhaps that isn't the case, and it's like that accumulation of things that have happened through the day, and like that's what you're trying to escape. That's why you find yourself drinking, or maybe that's why you find yourself drinking more than one or two glasses, because like you haven't quite dealt with all of that other stuff as well that was been coming up for you. So yeah, absolutely. Another thing I noticed as well, Angela, and this was true for me, is like so often it's the fear of how I'm going to feel is worse than how I actually feel.
Yes.
And so I think with feelings, with urges, is like getting curious. What do I believe about how I feel? I think that's a massive part of working with urges for yourself.
Yeah. A lot of people think, I don't like, boredom is a really good example of that. People are scared of being bored. What am I going to do? Like, this is what am I going to do if I'm not drinking at the end of the day? I don't want to be bored, right? Like, it's like, what's the big deal about feeling boredom? People do so many things to prevent themselves from feeling bored or feeling socially anxious or feeling some negative emotion that they think they might experience in the future. And they hold themselves back so much from experiencing big growth and actually more fun and more aliveness and more adventure in their lives because they're worried about experiencing a feeling that hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
your feelings are nothing to be scared of. I think that's the big thing here. Urges, the way you think about these feelings and what you think about the urges, that's what you guys want to ask yourself. What am I thinking about having an urge tonight? What am I thinking about feeling socially awkward when I go out with my friends next weekend when I'm not drinking? That's what you want to get aware of, because that judgment or the thoughts like that's going to suck, I can't handle that, some sort of variation of that, you have like a negative idea about feeling that thing, that's what's preventing you. So Patrick and I both teach this think, feel, do thing, right? It's very simple. You have a thought, it creates a feeling in your body, and then you're driven to take action. So when we think about feelings, you have to understand what you are thinking about that feeling. So a lot of people don't want to feel angry. They don't want to feel anxiety, right? They're like, ugh, I hate feeling that way. Why do I have to feel this way? I hate this. I want to escape it. Those thoughts are driving them to feel even worse. Because when you say, I hate feeling something, I don't like this, why do I feel this way? You feel judgment and more negative emotions because your thoughts create your feelings. And then you're more likely to go want to escape that because you think it's a problem. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, just as you were sharing those questions, like I felt the energy behind them as well, right? It's like, of course, they're just going to make you feel even worse than you feel
Yes,
to
I call
begin
it the
with,
shit
right?
compactor. It's like
Yeah,
we're
right.
already like maybe we're even in the negative emotion or whatever. And then we have a judgment on that feeling. You're just like, it's like unnecessary suffering, really.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just judgment, like judgment. We need to do less,
Yes.
less of
Yes.
that.
Your feelings can't hurt you. That's the good news here. Literally, the vibrations that you have that come with all of your different feelings, they really are just vibrations. And if you can get your head out of the way and like put your mind to the side for a second, go into your body, just notice what those different feelings feel like. It takes away all that scariness and fear because it's just a different tightness here. It's a hollow feeling here. Sometimes they are painful, like grief, ugh, right? Like some of those are excruciatingly physically painful, but drinking to cover that up makes you just delay that pain later and it makes it even worse. So,
And I don't know if you found this as well, right? Like, but the more that I've done that, the more I actually almost look forward to feeling my feelings now. Like
mhm.
I've like flipped it so that I associate more pleasure with my feeling, even if it doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Like I get almost get dopamine from feeling how I'm feeling because I know that there's positive outcomes at the end of it, in
Yeah,
terms of
you get to
my
learn
mental
about
well-being.
yourself. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. Talk about like the other topic, it's like how to treat yourself well. You are denying yourself your own human experience when you buffer and escape your feelings. You are denying who you are, and that doesn't feel good. It's not super respectful to the emotional experience that you're having. And so to treat yourself with the utmost respect, it's like any emotion that you have is valid. It doesn't matter if you feel like you shouldn't be that upset about something. You are that upset and it's okay. Right. So like validate that for yourself, allow yourself to feel those feelings and interrupt the cycle that we think we need to escape this stuff because we're humans and we're supposed to have a range of emotions all day. We're not just supposed to be happy all the time. Like we're supposed to have a range of feelings. And the more you can lean into that and learn about yourself and connect with yourself, that's like ultimate self-love right there. Like you just have a much more beautiful life that feels good. That doesn't have the unnecessary pain on the other side of a bad habit or something that's not good for you.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. What's our last question?
Sober days.
Sober
Around
day.
like was it
Well,
counting?
it's digging deeper than counting the days.
Digging deeper than counting days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we've talked all this whole class has been, we have not even talked about like get your days under, like count your days, right? This has all been about deep looking at what you're thinking, reflecting on yourself, understanding what you're feeling, right? Supporting yourself. So it's definitely way more than counting days. Like you don't really learn anything about yourself if your only goal is to go 30 days without drinking. If that's the only thing you do, that's awesome. You're probably going to feel physically better after 30 days, but you're not going to really learn so much about yourself and why you had been over drinking in the first place and understand your emotions and understanding your triggers. And even though that sounds like a lot of work and it can be hard, it's worth it.
Yeah. It's almost like willing yourself to get through the 30 days
Yeah,
if like you just focused on how many days you've not drunk, you know.
right,
So yeah, for me, I think it can be helpful. It just depends on what lens you're looking at it from,
right.
you know. Like
Yes.
are you using it to like show yourself how far you've come, no matter even if, you know, there's a few days in between where you have drank, you said you weren't going to drink or whatever
Mhm.
that looks like, you know, you don't use how many days you've drunk or not drunk as a tool to beat yourself up with.
Yeah.
Like use it to show yourself how far you've come. Right. I was working with a guy for last 6 months, and he probably didn't drink for like 5 of the 6 months. The
Mhm.
6 months before he drunk every day. Right. Like
Right.
so that's a massive improvement. But then like we would look at some of the days where he had drunk, and then he, you know, like as we were talking about earlier on, like we start beating ourselves up, we start making it a problem, and like, you know, our brain starts kind of wanting to go back to those more familiar thoughts of like, oh, it's, you know, like we start rationalizing and justifying our own
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, you know, counting days can be helpful, but just notice how you're counting them. Are you
Yeah.
using them for you, or are you using them against yourself? Again, like
Yes.
notice what comes up. If you go a day and you drink, you know, and you're like, oh my God, that means I've ruined dry January. Like, what's the point? You know, like what's your
Yeah.
attitude towards that?
Yes. I think that's a good point. Like, it's not like it's awesome to get 30 days, 31 days without drinking. You will definitely feel different. You know, you probably will sleep better. Like, there'll be a lot of benefits to your health, your kidneys, your liver, like all of it will be amazing. And if you don't do all 31, that's just not what it's all about, right? Like if you do end up drinking or you don't honor it, don't be like, fuck it, I can't. I was a failure, right? Like use that as an opportunity to learn and just keep going. Just be like, okay, I've got 20 days left in this month. I wonder how many of those I can make it through, right? Like it can be helpful, like you're saying. It's just shouldn't be the only focus. The focus, like, first of all, you get to decide what success means to you. You completing 31 days of not drinking does not automatically equal success. Like, how did you handle your urges and your triggers? Did you have to hide in a closet for 31 days and not go experience life? Probably not going to be like great for you to go back into the world, right? But how did you handle some of this stuff? What did you learn about yourself? Like, what else did you get to experience and do? Um, so you get to be the one that decides that. Like, there's not some governing body that says you're successful about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just you just have to be so open with yourself,
Yeah.
right? Like understanding and compassionate, as we were saying, I think is integral into
Yes.
rethinking your relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
I you know, I think it's great, like to be able to celebrate how many days you've gone without a drink and
Mhm.
stuff, if that's what you
Mhm.
want to do.
Mhm.
But equally, I think what progress have you made, right? Like even if you haven't drunk, because it goes back to our brain will focus on the negative, right? And what you focus on, you create more of.
Mhm.
And so you have to show yourself how you are improving, how you are making changes, what evidence are you creating in your life? Like how have you done something differently? How have you reacted differently? In fact, my most recent podcast that went out this week was called Find the Wins. It's
Mm.
about like even the most subtle things that you do that are different than you would have done before, like they're wins. Like that's what we're looking for,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like driving home and not stopping at the bottle shop on the way back and like going home and having a nice meal and then going to bed, whereas before you would have stopped off and got a bottle of wine. Like maybe it's noticing when your boss pissed you off at work, and instead of going home and drinking about it, you actually went home and got curious about it, right? Like there's all of these other things that have got nothing to do with drinking that come as a result of not drinking, which
Yes.
is incredible, right?
Yeah, it's so good. Like I tell people like, we should drink 64 ounces of water a day just to kind of like keep us at our healthiest, right? You should celebrate every time you drink 64 ounces of water. Every
Yeah.
time you follow through on one thing that you said that you would do today, celebrate that. Because like you said, the more we put attention to things, the more we get more of that. So if you're constantly focusing on what you're not doing, you're going to get more of that because it doesn't feel good, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take the last 15 and read some of these comments and answer as many questions as we can. Let's
Let's do
see.
it.
Got a lot of chats going on here. Let's see. Ooh, this is a good one. Tatiana, hi. How do I quell my desire to verbally shame my husband when he overdrinks? It pisses me off when he overdrinks. He gets snarky and snotty if triggered. You want to take that one, Patrick?
Yeah, right. Well, it's like that's a great opportunity to process your urges, like your urge in a different way, right? Like to process your emotions, that desire to verbally shame your husband when he overdrinks, right? Like, how
Mhm.
does that feel in your body when you want to do that? And get curious with yourself. Like, okay, so why do I want to do that? What's coming up for me? Because as we know, like he's not pissing you off. Like what you're thinking about what he's doing is pissing you off.
Yeah.
And so the question is, and from a very, very curious way of asking, is like, why? Like, why do you think that might be happening for yourself?
Mhm. Yeah, it's just an opportunity for you to connect. And if you don't want, it sounds like Tatiana, you don't want to do that anymore because you're asking how to quell that rage inside of you. I know what that feels like to fucking go for it, right? And it's just like you can imagine it, you can be with it, and just like I've talked about this before. Like I think about throat punching people sometimes. Full transparency. I've never done that though, but I kind of fantasize about it sometimes. Like, right? I have that desire at times, but I never follow through with it. Your desires aren't problems, right? Like you probably have a desire to do a lot of things that probably, like I have a desire to drink caffeine at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I rarely do that. It's like just not a problem. It's like, yeah, I recognize I want to do that. And I don't think that's probably good for me. Right. So the more you practice not doing it, that's when your desire for the thing goes down. So just recognize when you want to shame him and practice allowing that feeling to be present in your body, breathing through it, just like you do with your urges, just like Patrick said, and your desire for that will go down. And if you really do need, I also just want to make sure we're real careful here. If it's something that does need to be addressed, like he's behaving poorly and that's not
Yeah.
acceptable to you at that time, it does need to be addressed. I would do it after you're more neutral about it. So like the next day, right, when he's not drinking, when you're more calm, journal, do your work on that first, and then be like, hey, I got to talk to you about something, like not from that ragey place, because when emotions are high, intelligence is low. So he's not going to hear it, right? If you're coming at him with that energy, it's probably not going to be a good situation. So you got to get yourself more neutral before you have these kind of conversations. So that was a good question. Okay. Um, Shaganasi, hi. My kids did see me drink a lot, and it's hard to get past the shame. Want to talk about that, Patrick?
Yeah. So did see me drink a lot. So like how are you creating that shame for yourself still now?
Mhm.
Like what are you thinking about them seeing you drink? Like what is your brain getting up to? What stories is it creating? What are you making it mean that you've drunk in the past? Because like that shame isn't coming from your kids seeing you drink, right? Like that shame coming from what your interpretation of them seeing you drink is.
Mhm.
And so as throughout this call, it's like an invitation to get curious with yourself, you know. And I always think like how is that shame useful, right?
Mhm.
Like what purpose does it has for you?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And sometimes I think too, people do say stuff like, I know there's a couple people in my program right now whose adult children are saying stuff to them about their past drinking, and it's
Hmm.
very sensitive right now. Um, but it's like usually that shame is because you think you've done something wrong or
Yeah.
that you are wrong, like there's something wrong with you and that you're not a good mom or something like that. So I would just like ask yourself, what am I thinking when I feel this way? right? They said this, or they noticed that, or they saw me do this. What do I think about that? And then you can get awareness on that and just know that your thoughts can be changed and you don't have to believe your thoughts. And it's okay that you have those thoughts, right? But where we want to be careful of is it's not real necessary to carry that shame with you as you work on your relationship with alcohol. It just doesn't really help you change it that much. It's good to know that you might have those thoughts and you might have triggers, especially if they do say stuff to you, but it's not super helpful. It's just something to notice.
Yeah, it's like the magnets when you got I can't remember which way around it goes, but like they just like they
Yeah,
repel, they won't go, and they're like this,
yeah,
and that's kind
yeah,
of like what shame and like wanting to stop over drinking or not drink is like. It's like they're just constantly pushing against each other. They're not creating what you want. So yeah, it's definitely an invitation to get curious with yourself and
yeah,
just kind of understand what thoughts are creating that for you.
yeah.
Like
Don't
what's
let
your
it,
brain imagining or all
yeah.
of that.
Well, it's like if you're like me, because my biggest pain points right now are being a mother and thinking I'm screwing up my kids. Okay.
Yeah.
Especially because I know so much about behavior and all of this stuff,
Oh
right?
yes.
And so I can go there in my mind, and that's so painful for me, and like even though I'm a coach and I get awareness and I have a therapist and all this stuff, like that's still my thing because I don't want to fuck up my kids. I want
Yeah.
to save them from some of the pain that I've had as an adult, right? And
Yeah.
so my invitation to you is just like look at the ways you're not a bad mom. If you're saying you're a bad mom or you did these things that were bad, okay, let's just leave that there for now. But what are the ways that you're a good mom? What are the ways in which you showed up for your kids? What do you do for them on a regular basis? It's actually way more important than the drinking stuff. Those are like you want to fill your brain with more of that stuff than so much of this other stuff over here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because like when you're in shame, what are you not doing? Like how are you not wanting to show up for your kids and stuff like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
My mum always says like this is what she says to me is like whatever you do, you fuck them up, right? Like, and I think there's actually a book about that. And it doesn't mean that you fuck them up literally, but like we're all human beings. Like our brains meaning making machine. Like it gets up to all sorts. And you could be the best parent in the world and you could screw your kid up because they think that they can never be perfect, right?
Totally.
You know?
Right.
And so like we're all human. Like your kids are
It's
going to have stuff. My kids are
impossible.
going to have stuff. Like it's
Exactly.
inevitable.
It's
Yeah,
inevitable. It's inevitable. And you're here. So you're doing something right. You're getting
exactly.
awareness of right. You're learning about yourself. You're trying to work on it. It's all you can do. And forgive yourself. Really work on forgiving
Right.
yourself from some of that stuff. So I didn't share this part with you guys in the beginning, but when my third child was born, I drank margaritas every night for like 9 weeks, like from birth to 9 weeks. And just because I had terrible postpartum depression, I needed alcohol to get through that time. And instead of, I could go down this thinking pathway of how much I missed of those, moments with my newborn, but I don't let myself do that. Instead, I'm like, you know what? That was the only thing I knew how to do at the time. I'm so thankful now I have better tools. I'm so thankful I don't do that now. There's absolutely no point in me going down that spiral of shaming myself on that because I did do what I knew how to do at the time, and that's okay. And we
Yeah.
all have that with alcohol or not. We make the decisions that we know how to make at the time, and you guys are all here, really, like you're all here now trying to learn how to do something different, and that needs to go a long way.
It's fucking huge.
It
It's
is.
so big. Yeah, like and this is it. Like show yourself what you are doing instead of what you think you're not or what you could have or what you haven't,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And you will teach that to your children when they become adults and make mistakes. It's all about like, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm going to show you that. Like, if you need to apologize, apologize, and then just be like, and I love you and I'm working on this. Show them that you're a human. Show them how to do that. I think is the best thing that we can do.
Yeah, right. Like it's that old adage, it's not what we do, it's not what we say, it's what we do. It's like what do you want to model to your kids? Like with that example of the restaurant I said about earlier, I didn't show up in the way that I want. Like I apologized to her afterwards. I told her what was going on for me, right? Like it's and I don't ever remember my parents doing that when I was a kid, and if I
No.
got shouted at for
Oh God,
whatever
no.
reasons, right? Yeah,
No,
exactly. So,
not even
you know,
now.
yeah. So it's just like, owning up, like taking responsibility for yourself, and
Yeah,
showing them in the best way you can, and
yeah,
that's about being here.
yeah. All right. Um, yeah, Lori, you're saying you're trying to do this. My kid's not talking to me right now because this is the second time I disappointed them. So I'm doing the healing by myself right now, and it saddens me, but I'm going forward. Wish I had their support, of course. Like, of course, we wish that we had their support. And I don't necessarily know that that's true.
Yeah.
I wish I had their support. That may just be a thought that doesn't feel good for you, and it may not even be a fact. Just because they're not talking to you doesn't mean that they don't support you. That's an action that they're taking. We don't really know what they're thinking, right? They're just having a boundary with themselves or whatever. Like, it doesn't mean that they're not supporting you. So I don't want you to believe that. Do you have anything to say about that, Patrick?
Yeah. So what came up for me is like almost like maybe they're waiting to see you do something so that they can start to trust you again. So in order for you to trust yourself, like
Mhm.
that's the support that you need for yourself right now. Like trust in yourself, and hopefully that's they'll see that, and maybe their support is, and it might sound a bit harsh, but like maybe their support is like from stepping back for a moment so that you can start to like rebuild that relationship up for yourself. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, thinking that they're not supporting you or that you had their support is one of those thoughts that sounds like it's coming from a good place, but really it's actually kind of it's that critical voice, that
I would
judgment.
agree. I would just try it on like, how, Lori, how does it feel when you think that they're not supporting me right now? Like, it sounds like for that we're coaching you, by the way. Like, I hope that's okay. But like when you have that thought, it's like you think that's just the fact. They're not talking to me. They're not supporting me right now. But that's a sentence in your mind that when you actually pull it out of your brain, like kind of look at it and then think it consciously, how does that feel in your body? Probably sad, right? You can probably some negative feeling that you're having, right? Disappointed, something like that. So that's just a way to like get awareness, right? So if you want to build their trust again and make yourself feel better as you're working on this stuff, what's a way that you can think about what they're doing? Not that you need to be happy, that's not the goal. It's like what might be a little bit more neutral. Like they're taking some time to allow me some time. That would probably be a lot more truthful and probably feel a lot more like neutral for you. I don't know. You could try that one on. Yeah. Sending all the love. Okay. Um, okay. Just looking at urges akin to anxiety, like little anxiety attacks. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same principle, right? Like anxiety is created, is that fight or flight response a lot of the time, isn't it? Like we're in our future, we're thinking about what might happen and what probably doesn't ever happen, right?
Mhm.
But it's like that accumulative thing, when you like building on that anxiety, then it can lead to something like an anxiety attack because like your body doesn't know what to do with it anymore. It's just kind
Mhm.
of like in survival mode. So, with anxiety, emotions are one and the same, aren't they? Like when we're processing urges for drinking and not touching our phones, for example, it's the same as processing how we feel sad. It's the same as processing how we feel anxious or angry and stuff, right? It's all about getting back into your body, getting out of your head, right? Because when you're focused on your breath, when you're focused on what you're feeling here, you're not up here. And this is what's creating all of the feelings in the first place.
Yes.
So,
Yes. I think the our urges akin to anxiety. I think you can have more urges like we talked about earlier if you're not checking in and processing your feelings on a regular basis, right? So like if you just aren't in tune with yourself, you're not connecting with yourself. How am I feeling right now? Doing some breathing, taking care of yourself, then all of that kind of stays with you in your body. And then you have more urges to get rid of it, especially if you've responded to that in the past with alcohol. So you might have more urges if you're not really addressing your emotional needs, throughout the day or on a regular basis. And like you said, Patrick, earlier, it's like if you can address some of those emotional needs, you might not have as many urges. So that's what it's like for me. Like when I notice my feelings come in and out throughout the day, I try to pause and process them. And then I'm not thinking I need something, and I don't get an urge to like go eat something at the end of the day or go escape that, because I've dealt with it. It's not even like a consideration in my mind. It doesn't even come up as a suggestion to do. Yeah, it was so fun. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. We've been talking about this and it's like, let's just do it. Try January.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's been great. I've loved it.
All right, friends. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
So good, right? All right. Did you guys go to angelamascenik.com/what's-next yet? If not, go do that right now. Just click through in the show notes and get your name on that list. All right, friends. We will talk to you next week. And if we're doing another class, it's called Beyond Dry January next week. And if you want to sign up for that, you can shoot me an email. You can go to my Facebook page at Coach with Angela Mascenik. You can go to my Instagram at Coach with Angela Mascenik. Find the link to register for that webinar. It's my standard webinar that I do every January called Beyond Dry January, and it's going to give you tactical tips and practices and coaching to help you be successful for what's after Dry January. So how can you keep going with changing your relationship with alcohol, whatever that looks like. So make sure you get signed up for that class as well. All right, friends, we'll talk to you next week. Bye.